G'day guys. I'm going to do today's video in a bit of an unscripted way. I want to talk about a moderately muddy topic that I think for most survivors of coercive control and long-time family violence um, typically experience, but often have a lot of trouble naming this or even recognizing it within themselves. And what I want to talk about is survivors who struggle to envision the future. And it's a very, very interesting topic because more often than not, survivors, when it comes to talking to them about what the future entails, or even them themselves sitting back and thinking about it, what they draw to is weirdly some form of blank. So they look at the future, whether it's 6 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And it's a bit like doing a search function where you kind of come back with a file not found. Now, it's a very nuanced and slightly interesting topic because it's not like they're looking at that particular point and it's black. So it's not black, it's blank, and they're not looking at that particular future point and going, "Well, I'm dead." It's not that at all. It's more, um, when I'm looking at that particular point, I don't see myself in that picture in the future. For me personally, it is blank. I'm literally not seeing a file found. There is no file found. It does not exist. Now, where I think it can get quite confusing and quite nuanced for a lot of survivors of domestic violence is that when you talk about their children's future, sometimes they can actually bring that picture up. Oh, for my kids, this is what it's going to look like. Oh, I envision this for them and I want that for them and I want that for them. And that image is really crystal clear. And if you talk about other people's needs and other people's wants, again, that image becomes really crystal clear. And when you talk to a survivor, thinking again into that future, that they might deflect their language back into what they see for their children or what they see for the people around them. And when they do put themselves in that image, it's slightly like a third person. Like, I want my children to feel this from me, as opposed to, I want to be this person and I want to do that. So, what I'm going to talk about, as I said, this is going to be a very unscripted video, but what I want to talk about throughout this video is what are the kind of core mechanisms that create this version of what's referred to in the literature as the blank future. And there is clinical literature around this, but it's typically partly within PTSD, but partly within other elements of coercive control that kind of muddy up the version of, or the clinical definition of this. But I want to kind of work it through with you. And then the second thing I want to talk about after we talk about what the two primary mechanisms are is how you go about starting to reclaim the ability to be able to dream for your own sake what the future is going to entail. So before I go much further, I've got to do my typical blurb, which is for those of you who are new here, this is Stand Again, a lived experience platform for male victims of family violence. Abuse is not limited to one gender, but this channel does focus on the male perspective because it is so often dismissed or overlooked. That said, today's video is applicable to anybody. So if you do find any value in this content, please like, hype, which is apparently a new function, subscribe, and please put your comments and thoughts in the chat below. So the blank future phenomenon. I'm going to talk about the mechanisms. Then I'm going to talk about why sometimes survivors struggle to identify this, and how it starts to play out for them. So there are two primary mechanisms that create the dynamic for a survivor to no longer be able to envision for themselves what the future entails. The first is quite explicit, which is a lack or loss of agency around their future. So a person within coercive control will typically be in a mode where anytime they bring up, hey, this is what I envision for the future, this is what I see as the future, these are my dreams and my aspirations and my perspective on how I see myself and how I see us in the future. When you're in an abusive environment, that will get attacked. "Oh, you're stupid. Oh my god, I can't believe you. What do you mean you wanna go back to school and you wanna learn this? When have you ever followed anything through?" Like, you'd get all of this, gaslighting and attacks and just pure abuse around your plans and your goals and your directions for the future. Or you might just get told you're stupid and you're wrong. Like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not how it works. That's not where we're gonna go. That's not you've thought the things through. Why don't you ever think things through?" Sorry, having slight flashbacks myself. So you go through these things and you're told how stupid you are, how unrealistic you are, how delusional and selfish and naive you are about the future and the world and all this kind of stuff. Whenever you're talking about your own future perspective on what the future will entail. So what happens there is with enough times of being told how stupid your future is, you end up starting to surrender the agency over envisioning that future. You start to let it go. You kind of go, it becomes an unsafe topic, internally and externally. An unsafe topic to raise with your abuser, and an unsafe topic for you to start to think about it. Because every time you do, your nervous system will kind of brace for some form of punishment, whether again it's the abuse or the told you're selfish or told you're delusional. Your nervous system will start to associate the dreams of putting yourself in the future as something unsafe to think and talk about. So you'll start to avoid it subtly and then more explicitly. You'll start to avoid it. And where you get to this kind of surrendering of agency is enough times of being told how stupid you are when it comes to thinking about the future, and enough times of your abuser telling you that they know best, you end up starting to get into a mode of, well, you tell me. You tell me what the future is going to be like. You tell me. You get into this mode of waiting. It's like, if I can't think about what the future is going to be in forward, then you have to tell me what the future's going to be. So you surrender your agency over the future of yourself to your abuser. Because anytime you talked about it, it got attacked, and they would always tell you that they know best. So you go, okay, fine. You tell me, because if I bring this up, I'm going to get attacked. If I kind of say this is what I want for the future, I get attacked and I get yelled at and I screamed at and I told how stupid I am. So fine, whatever, you tell me. And it might even start in a flippant way and eventually it kind of lends into a more solid, I don't feel safe talking about it, so you tell me. Now, the second mechanism that happens here is it's a really subtle and complicated one. And I'm going to walk through it, but you'll have to kind of bear with me as I walk through it. So it's where the byproduct of future faking takes you. It's like the phase two of future faking. And what'll happen is in an abusive relationship, you'll get sold a story about what the future's going future faking. You get sold this story. Oh, marry me or get in a relationship with me and we're going to have a wonderful life and it's going to look like this. And it's rainbows and sunshine and little birds tweeting in the background and this kind of happy life and all this kind of stuff. And it's stable and growth and all this kind of stuff. So that the abuser will paint this beautiful picture of everything you have ever dreamed about in what the future is going to look like. And you will wholeheartedly buy into it because the abuser will mirror the language for which you yourself are into. So they'll ask you questions about your dreams and they'll go, oh, me too, me too, me too. When really it's not, it's just them using language to kind of get you hooked. Now, where this gets subtle is over time, you start to recognize that the picture that they're describing to you about the future is not real. That it is literally some form of photo or magazine article picture that they're sold you, not a real construct with which you are within. So it's not a picture in which you are in, it's literally you looking at a magazine clipping going, this is what they're telling me, as opposed to you imagining yourself within that environment and off you go. And the mechanism here actually becomes you get so focused on trying to convince yourself that the magazine article photo that you're staring at could possibly be real that you lose track of putting yourself in the image. So you become so focused on trying to pretend, oh, I think this magazine article is real. I think it is real. I think it could be real. And I want to put all my hope and dreams into pretending that the magazine article is real, that I now am no longer imagining what the actual future is. It doesn't have the proper color because now it's just a magazine article. It's just a fake image. So you end up clinging to this hope that the dream could possibly, the picture that they painted might actually possibly be true, as opposed to how do I put myself in there? So where we go from here is when you start to move out of this realm. So, say for example, you part ways with the abuser. Now, this is a really interesting kind of component. Because if you, and again, this is a recovery video, so not a tactic video. This is a recovery video. But when you part ways with your abuser, and you have now kind of gone through the discard phase, and you're a survivor of the abuse, and you are you've divorced, whatever it is, the ability to be able to paint yourself in a aspirational, dreamlike perspective of the future, like, imagining yourself highly successful in a happy, healthy relationship, all that kind of stuff, it becomes really hard to do. And it becomes really hard to do because those two mechanisms still apply. They haven't been addressed, they haven't been corrected. So you haven't repaired the damage from those two mechanisms. The release of the agency and the holding on to this kind of dream of what could have been. And in addition to that, there's one new mechanism or two new mechanisms, sorry, that come into play. Mechanism two, which comes in, three, sorry, which comes into play when you discard and go through the divorce, is the abuser will seek to turn your perspective over the future dark. You can't survive without me. You will be a failure. You're always a failure, et cetera, et cetera. They'll try to make the picture of the future as dark as possible, either as punishment or as to keep you further entrapped. Like you can't survive without me as entrapment, or your life will be disgusting and awful and terrible in the future. That's purely just trying to punish you for departing them. And this dark perspective, if you haven't got rid of mechanism one, which is surrendering your agency over what your future is going to entail, if you haven't addressed that, then you buy into it. You go, oh, okay, my future will be dark. Now, there's a nuance in here, which is um, typically it took a bit of strength to be able to get out of the abusive relationship. Hats off to you. That takes a lot of strength. But also, you'll get a little bit defiant. You're like, no, you can't tell me. But you still fully haven't addressed that mechanism one. Somewhere in there, there's still, I kind of half believe what you're saying around the future, but I'm going to tell you, fuck off, mind my language, but I'm going to tell you, get lost. That's not true. But deep down, there's still this kind of, but what if it's true? So that mechanism one needs to get healed fully before you can take on board your agency. Now, the other component, which is like evolution three of mechanism two, so mechanism two being the picture, you get locked in on the picture. So the other component is you end up with a combination of a few things around grief and despair, which follow this picture of the blank. Yeah. So you'll go, oh, I'll envision the future. I can't do it. Like I can't do it. Like if I think about the future, I'm perfectly fine thinking about the future of my kids. I'm perfectly fine thinking about the future of my abuser, who as far as they've told me, they're going to have a highly successful life, and that's exactly what I imagine will happen. But when it comes to me, with the darkness that they've instilled, I struggle to see a bright future. Or if I do look at the future, it's just blank. It still comes up as blank. And it's because you end up with this level of grief and despair that comes with it all. Grief on the loss of the dream you had when you were young, like the dream you thought your future was going to be when you were young, but also this grief around the future fate that the abuser provided you. And sometimes they're exactly the same thing if your abuser's done their job really well. Sometimes they're slightly different. And you go, oh, I dreamed of what life would be like when I was a kid, but also I grieve for the fact that I got sucked into the future fake that got me into the position I did. And then the despair comes in where you do all this work trying to go, I'm envisioning the future and it keeps going dark on me and it brings you to despair because you're like, I can't do it. And every time I do it, it comes out either flat or dark or, some kind of version in. Now, where it starts to get really interesting and tricky, and why I mentioned earlier, survivors tend to struggle to talk about this, is if you ask one. So if you ask someone who's been through this, what do you see in 5 years' time? Then they'll give you language that sounds like it is future viewing, but is actually a form of slight deflection. So they'll go, "Hey, I'm just trying to live every day as it comes at the moment. With so much going on, I'm just trying to live every day as it comes, and I'm just focused on my kids at the moment, all this kind of stuff." Now, the problem with that is it actually sounds really, really defensible. Sounds really, really defensible. You kind of, yeah, fair enough. Like, it's a crazy time. Like, everything that's going on with your ex and trying to raise kids, part time, however it works out with whatever custody schedule you get, it's hard. It's a lot of work, and you've been through a lot. So I'm not going to push. Like it's purely defensible. I'm just focused on now. It's still a survival response. It's still you deflecting. And as a survivor as well, you also start to buy into that story. You also start to go, oh, I'm just going to focus on the now. I'm just going to focus on the now. Because every time you go back to trying to think of the future, again, that despair component comes in around the inability to be able to picture it in a way which is hopeful and bright and lovely. You end up avoiding it, and you do so by deflecting to yourself, which is, I just need to focus on today. Now, there's a component in here which I think is also really quite telling. And again, this is sometimes where you'll find abuse survivors will start to have the light bulb go off around this topic, where they start to orientate and organize their life around, and this is post abuse, around them no longer being there in the future. So, they've gotten out of the abusive situation, and now suddenly you start hearing stories about them getting things organized for their kids' future and all this kind of stuff. Again, it sounds really, really defensible. But when you unpack it, more often than not, it's kind of from a premise of they're actually not there in the future. Now, it's a really nuanced perspective because they're not dead. In fact, that language doesn't even come up. But for some reason, when they think about the future with their kids and with their family and all that kind of stuff, their own identity is not in that picture. So they've gone and organized things for investments and, little keepsakes have been put aside for the kids and, all these little, they've written little stories about their life and all this kind of stuff. And it's like they're preparing a little time capsule over who they were and what they were like and all this kind of stuff for the future when their kids pick it up because they're not going to be there to share it, even though the kind of words around death never come in. And to be honest, the survivor doesn't even twig. Like they don't even pick up on that particular element. They just have this assumption that they're not there because when they think about the future, them themselves are not in the picture. They're not there. So it's a very, very nuanced and challenging topic to work through. And where you end up with is this kind of really pinpointed topic that actually needs to get addressed within this that most abuse survivors need to address, which is How do I recover my agency over my life and my future? And recovering agency isn't just visualizing. That is not it. Like visualizing, sure, is a component to it. Yeah. But true agency says, and this is possible. It's the step that comes after it. Yes, I can visualize a bright and wonderful future that is, going to be me living and laughing and loving life and having these wonderful, getting into a brand new relationship that's happy and healthy and being, financially successful and all that kind of stuff. That's visualization. True agency says, and I can make that possible. That's that's my future. I can make that possible. So to get to the point where you're reclaiming agency over what your future and what your dreams can entail, that bit takes a bit of time and effort. And it's not as hard as it sounds, but it does take your conscious effort to start to work towards it without shrinking back from it, which is a typical thing. So go back to that comment around despair when you start to think about it and you kind of have trouble, or if you kind of picture this future and suddenly this darkness kind of takes over it like a cloud, and you kind of shy away from it. You have to have a little bit of not shrinking from that and go, no, I'm going to keep pushing through and I'm going to keep challenging that. Yeah. And I need to remember that the person who is owns this is me, not my abuser. Even if I'm, post the ex of the relationship or finished the relationship, that is an element. So to rebuild it, you need a couple of recovery steps. The first one is to not go too big too quick. So don't kind of create this perspective of the future is going to be I'm going to be a multi-billionaire with airlines to my name and 16 wives and all this kind of stuff, whatever crazy thing you can think of. Don't go that too far. Instead, bring it into something which is manageable, achievable, and permissible. So you might say, hey, in the next 6 weeks or in the next 3 months, these are the three things that I want to kind of start to see. And just give yourself permission to have it. Just go, in the next 6 weeks, I want to have, then I'm going to start to stumble. I'm going to want to start to see I have applied for 6 jobs and I've done this with my kids, or I've created this memory with my kids, and I've gone out to a cafe 6 times, and I've created one new friendship, like that kind of slightly manageable, smaller, more permissible types of things. So we're not talking high ambition; we're talking moderate. Then the next step is to go, well, then how do I do that? So again, this is kind of visualization through to actual delivery. And here it's up to you. Like you can pick those three things and go, hey, all right, cool. So I've got this health goal, for example, where I go, hey, within the next 3 months, I want to move into this mode of actually just eating really healthy, cut the junk food out. I just want to eat healthy, or I want to have a living space that looks like this. I want to have my living room and my kitchen and dining room set up in this particular way. And there's a dual component of agency in there, yeah. So which I'm sure you can pick up on. And you go, that's what I'm going to do. So my plan to do that looks like this. This is how I go about doing that activity. And I go, cool. Now I've got an ambition. I've got some steps that I need to do. So you're going to turn that future vision into specific actions, not images, actions. So I'm not imagining what my future space is going to look like. I'm imagining what my future space is going to look like. I've now got 3 actions that sit against it. I'm going to effing do it. That's it. Yeah. Now, that kind of 3-step perspective, which is, visualization, define the steps, do the steps. That 3-step perspective, you need to repeat on a cadence. Okay. And you need to repeat it on a cadence, not an emotion. And what that means is you need to do this deliberately every whatever horizon you pick, if it's once a month or once every 6 weeks. So once a month, this is my new goal. Once a month, I've got a goal, I've got a set of actions, I'm going to do them. Once a month, I've got a goal, I've got a set of actions, I'm going to do it. You repeat it on a cadence, irrespective of how you feel about it. So it's not about the emotion. It's like, hey, I am going to be motivated this month to do those things. That's irrelevant. This is about consistency on doing these small activities over time. Now, mechanically, what you're training yourself here is you're teaching your body from a nervous system perspective that it is safe for you to create a vision of the future that you can do without being yelled and screamed at for it, and that you can work towards that without, again, punishment or guilt or gaslighting along the way. And you're doing it in small ways because you're starting to build yourself up like a steam engine on a train, starting to kind of pick that momentum up. You start to build it. Yep. And using that analogy, you continue that. Yeah. So you need to start building that muscle of once a month. What's my objective by the end of the month? What are the steps I need to do? Do them once a month. Boom, 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 each and every month. And you want to get yourself into a mode where you go, right now I'm feeling comfortable that I have started to achieve these things. I'm starting to reteach myself that it's safe and actionable and actually achievable for me to do. And then each month that I start to feel a little bit more comfortable, I'm going to increase the ambition. I'll either increase the ambition or increase the time and ambition. I will not stay steady. Yeah. I will increase the ambition. That's very, very important. This is not about once a month you clean your living room. That's not what it's about. Okay. The once a month cleaning your living room is about reclaiming your sense of agency. Each month, once you start to get settled, you increase your ambition because this is truly about taking ownership over how high you can get. All your dreams that you had with as a kid, the image of you smiling and laughing and loving life, you need to train yourself that that is possible to achieve again, and that is not achieved through once a month cleaning the living room. That's achieved to once a month cleaning the living room and reminding myself I have agency, and then increasing my ambition each and every month until I get to a point where I'm going, you know what? I've proved myself each and every month that these incremental increases in ambition are possible. I actually think I can take bigger leaps now. I actually starting to feel comfortable. So again, like that train analogy, that train is now picking up speed. So I don't know how you guys thought about me going in a very unscripted way for a video. I know my blueprint of family violence tactics are very, very scripted. And my other ones are typically, so the other series I should do, which is my history and my story, that's very unscripted. But do let me know in your comments what you think and what you thought about me going a moderately unscripted way. I'll cap up with this particular topic by reiterating a couple of things. One is um, this topic is not about optimism. It's a slightly interesting thing. It's not about trying to fake you being optimistic about the future. It's actually about repairing your authorship over your future. So, repairing your agency, which says, I am in control. I have agency here. I am the author of my future. And once you can repair that, then you can craft whatever visualization for the future that you've got that is optimistic as you want it to be, because you're now the person holding the pen. All right. Thank you very much, guys. I'll leave it there. Bye. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember, that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.